That's why probably good.
Okay, I'll call this meeting to order.
Permanent house forever.
What do we have?
Mayor Pro Tem, City Commissioners, thank you for being here. We don't expect Commissioner Joaquin Zamora to be here today. He's not going to be able to make it, sends his apologies. And I understand the mayor's on his way. So, pretty excited today. I am really excited. I don't know what that's about, but I really am. And I want to, first of all, thank you for the time that you're going to give us the next couple of weeks, as I always do. We know it's a tremendous amount of time and energy on your part, and like your pay, it's it's pretty low. So I really, really appreciate that, and I actually appreciate the staff here. I don't know what this is about, but I love it. I love that you're here, and I appreciate you being here. I want to thank the staff, all of you, for putting what I think might be the best budget I've ever seen. And it has to do with all of you here, and everybody that's around that table at staff meetings. I want to thank the assistant city managers for their work, Angie and your department. Without you, obviously this is not done. The finance department, headed by Sonia, and is doing a fantastic job for us, holding the ship. Thank you for that, Caesar and Isaac. So, I'm real happy about what we're going to present the next few weeks, starting with today, and I think that you're going to be happy too. Most of all, I think that the citizens of McAllen are going to be very appreciative of the work that you're going to do here and the work that we've done to get here. So I think after this slide, we can just close the meeting and finish. We are going to recommend that we reduce the property tax rate once again. The third consecutive year that you would be reducing the property tax rate. And all the information that you're going to hear today is going to reinforce the fact that we can do that. We don't reduce property tax rates because we want to. We do it because it's a byproduct of how we do business. And what this budget is telling us is we owe this to the citizens of McAllen. Yep. And so, while this is the third consecutive year that we'll reduce the property tax rate, it's the fourth time in 6 years that you do it. So we're really proud of that. So the current property tax rate is $45.7285. We're proposing a $44.9989. That's the number we used when we started the budget. As you know, it is always an estimate because we don't get the tax roll until about 10 days ago. And in fact, once we get the tax roll, Becky Grimes, who's not here today, that I'm very thankful for, has to run the calculation. And it's probably, how many pages? I don't know, 20 pages or so to do that calculation that shows you everything there is to know about the property tax rate. And that takes us, several days. And then we gotta input the new number into the budget. But what you're gonna find out between today and our wrap up is that our estimate was very, very close. For a $650 million budget and $150+ million general fund, we're going to be off by less than $100,000. So here are the highlights. So we are looking at about a $652 million total budget. That's all inclusive, all funds, enterprise funds, and so on. We have over $300 million of capital. I think that that's something that very few cities in the state of Texas can say, that basically 1/2 of this monster, you are improving infrastructure. So something that the city commission should be, absolutely relaying to your constituents. It also includes a 3.5% minimum compensation increase for every city employee. There's actually a lot of room for that. We started the budget process looking at 2% and 3%. We ended up at 3.5%. We're a big believer, as you are, that we've got to do everything that we can, especially in the environment that we're in and that we have been for several years, to try to push that compensation up as much as possible. In the budget, we're recommending 25 new employees in all funds. I think that you're going to find interesting in where they go. It's very strategic. I thank the staff for what they request. We couldn't do everything that they're asking for, but I think that we're gonna do what we need. 9 of those 25 are in the general fund, and we always talk about this, right? We talk about this fund and that fund. The general fund is obviously the big gorilla in the room, because it funds all of our general government. But nevertheless, there are other funds. Sanitation, for example, is a huge fund that helps us do a lot of the things that we do for the city. The general fund ending balance, a record by far of $94.5 million in the general fund alone. The total of all funds at the end of 2025 will be an estimated $281 million. One of the things that I would point to that number is that it tells you a little bit about how conservative we budget, because we're carrying $500 million right now in the bank, is how much we have in total reserves. But yet, we're projecting 281 for September of 2025. It's gonna be closer to $500 million. The general fund revenue over expense, very important number. Sorry. Hey, Mayor, just started. Very important number, 6.7. That means that in the general fund alone, we've got $6.7 million of revenue over expenses. You know, we've kind of gotten used to this thing, this kind of number the last few years. This is not normal for cities across Texas. They're usually looking at a balanced budget of $1. Because if you have $1, then you have a balanced budget in the black. In McAllen, the last 2 to 3, for sure 3, maybe even 4, we've been in the millions of dollars. In the last 2, it's been over 6. And so what it tells you is that this group of people have done a really, really good job of providing you what I'll call a soft landing. One of the things that you're hearing across the state of Texas is what school districts are going through. They're not talking about soft landings because of that cliff that they went over. You were very smart and very strategic about what to do with that money that we got, you know, from the federal government. And because you've got these kinds of revenues over expenses. What does that represent? That represents 232 days of working capital in the general fund. Our requirement is 140. We usually don't like to get under 160. So if you compare 140 versus 232, you almost got 100 days of working capital above what you're required to have. And when I say required, that's the requirement from the bond ordinance. It requires you to have a 140. You never go under 160. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit, something that we're going to recommend you consider. We funded over $9 million of department requests. This is what we call decision packages. What that means doesn't really matter. What it really does is that's money that the departments requested above last year. Their total request was $19 million. That's where all the work goes in when we go through the budget in June, is what are we going to recommend to the city commission that we believe we need and we believe is going to make our city better. I will never suggest to you that the $19 million aren't good requests by the department heads. It's just we have to continue that soft landing and ensure that that budget never grows more than you can handle in future years. And what is that? We usually try to stay between 3 and 4%. That's how precise the budgets are on a yearly basis. $98 million of sales tax collection is what we are forecasting. We really thought we were going to get to 100. We're real close. That's our forecast. Again, record-breaking by a long shot, and you're going to see that in a minute. $23 million of sales tax to the Development Corporation. It was only 2 years ago that we surpassed 20 million for the very first time in our history. We're projecting 23 million. So what does that do? You know, in 1997, you know, this community decided that we wanted to form a development corporation. There was a lot of reasons to do it, right? It's a very important fund that we use as the state allows us for a lot of things. But what it also does, it reduces the property tax burden on the citizen. That's It's a requirement because it's part of the formula. So what does that mean to the taxpayer? It reduces their tax bill by 18.5%. Literally, that's how much your property tax rate would be higher if we didn't have the development corporation. So this budget continues to fund the CIP, very strategic segregated sales tax. Many years ago, with the help of some of the staff, starting with that young lady over there in the back, Rebecca, and Michelle, we got this company called Insight. And it brought us sales tax that we had never seen before, okay? But instead of doing what everybody else would have done and put it in the general fund and go spend it every year, we said, you know what? This is a great new source of revenue for capital improvements. We used to fund CIP only with gas royalties. They're gone. There was a day when gas royalty would bring us $10 million a year. Now, it's less than $100,000. And so, this is a good way of funding the CIP on a yearly basis and not impacting your general fund. So even though it comes into the general fund, it goes straight out to the CIP. This budget also continues to provide street maintenance. This city does more street maintenance than any city that I know of on a percent basis compared to total budget, and certainly much more than any city in the Rio Grande Valley. That's the highlight of the budget. I'll remind you that we're going to do two things. We're going to show you trends, just kind of remind us of how we got here and where we're headed. And then we're going to show you basically every fund that we have in a very global picture type. Then, as you know, starting next week, you're going to have the department heads go through all of these funds where all of the detail will be shown. You tell us what you like and what you don't like. But today you're going to hear a lot of information, so we're hoping not to keep you here real long because it's a lot of numbers. So that you have in front of you, because you always told us the fact that you can't see it, and sometimes it's strategic that I don't want you to see it. But this time, like last year, you've got them all here. I don't intend to go through every one of them, but it gives you an idea of all of the funds that we deal with and how they interact with each other. Starting with the general fund, the beginning fund balance is an estimated $87.6 million, and we are going to end up with over $90 million in reserves in the general fund alone. And if you go through it, and we're going to go through all of these in the next few weeks, you got them all. You got the hotel occupancy tax, hotel venue, development corporation, marketing, special events, Christmas parade, parklands, public education, Friends of Quinta, CDBG, police department, cops, downtown, drainage fee, which we've got great news for that, tax increment reinvestment zone, sales tax, local tax, CIP, infrastructure, and so on. And so we intend to touch on every one of those. Basically, the number that's most important here, in my opinion, are the fourth column from the right. That's your total budget, $652,232,000. And the one on the very far right, which is going to be your ending fund balance of $281 million. So, let's talk about the general fund a little bit. Here's a más o menos a 5-year summary of total days of working capital. You know, we had some weird things go on with every city in the last several years. The pandemic hit us hard, and then we got a lot of relief. And so it was a real chore, it was a real strategic chore to make sure that those funds went in and out the right way. And remember, we had workshops after workshops about what to do. So in 2021, our beginning fund balance was $75 million, ending working capital was 72. So without going through all of those numbers, what you see is a very healthy incremental growth in not only in total expenses but in revenues and how much money you put in the bank. One of the things that I talked about the other day with the staff is you could spend all the money you want, right? And everybody says, wow, look at what they do. But what are you doing for the future? How much are you putting away? How much are you putting in the bank and what are you doing for your citizens? So when you can do as much infrastructure as we've done, put as much money away as we have put away, and reduce the property tax rate 3 years in a row, I think that says a lot about how we do business here. So every year, we've had over 200 days of working capital. And what you've also done every couple of years, just to make sure that we're not taking money every year from fund balances, we're taking what we call excess and we moved it out every 2 years. And we put it into capital. 2 years ago, we moved $21 million out of the general fund after we finished this whole thing so that you could be comfortable of what we were showing you. We're going to recommend you do that again because our fund balance is just so big. And there are great needs that we've got out there. Specifically, we've got 3 or 4 projects that are very big that we think that we can fund to a really high level by taking cash. So those are the total days of working capital we've seen the last 5 years. And if you can imagine, from 72 ending working capital to 94, that's not insignificant. So this is another way to show it. I think this is important because the next couple of slides, you're going to see that not only did the pandemic hit us hard, but 10 years ago, we're getting hit hard because the economy wasn't doing so well. So if you go down all the way to 2013, that was the working capital that we had in the general fund. The black line going across the bottom is our minimum required. So you see 2013, we went down 2014, back up, and then we slid a little bit. And that was because in those years, between 2015 and 17, our sales tax actually dropped. I don't know if you all remember that, but that was a challenge for this community and for this staff to come up with the budgets that we did. And then after that, I always use this word, we're like a rocket, we really were. Because although we got all that money from ARPA and other federal money, look what we did after. Because remember, we transferred it all out. We never put money in the general fund and kept it there. So very healthy increases in working capital. So this is another way of looking at that graph, but this is really interesting, Mayor and Commissioner. For years we've been talking about trying to get those two curves to merge, okay? And for the red line to go above the blue line. And why is that? The blue line is sales tax, and we're like a phenomenon when it comes to sales tax per capita. And the red line is ad valorem revenue. That's actually taxes that we collect from property tax. And so both lines are very nice and steady other than our pandemic, right? And you see in 2015, 2016 where sales tax dropped. You see that? 15, 16, 17? That's why, in part, our fund balances and our working capital dropped a little bit. But that was a real challenge. I mean, because you've got all of these fixed costs, you've got personnel, you've got fire, police, all that stuff. So other than that, and the pandemic in 2020, you're seeing really nice growth. But what I find the most interesting is if you look at fiscal year 2014, and you look at the difference between sales tax, which is the 46 million, and the 32 million of ad valorem revenue, that's a whopping 42.7% difference in those two numbers. Okay? 42% more sales tax revenue than ad valorem tax revenue. But if you go to 2024, our current year, that gap of 67 and 55, that's only 21% difference. That's really, really good. When your sales tax is climbing the way it is and your ad valorem is closing that gap, that's very, very healthy for your community. Why is that? Because ad valorem revenue is very stable. We can predict to the 0.25% how much revenue we're going to get in a year. And in sales tax, as you know, it moves up and down. So I think that this community can absolutely say that the growth in the community is stable and healthy.
Roy,
Yes, sir.
quick question. Are we able to analyze what types of companies are contributing to that huge growth between 2020 and 2024 in terms of sales tax? I mean, it used to be, well, obviously the mall was a big factor and other types of establishments, but the mall has remained relatively stable. There's a new wing, right, and that. But are there ways for us to look into the numbers and determine, well, what's driving it from 45 to 65? I mean, that's a big increase.
Yeah, it really is. The answer is yes. We can. We have to do it in a confidential way because that information is confidential. So we would be able to share it with you. Let's say it's some kind of confidential report, and then take it back because it is confidential information. But we do have it. But I'm glad you mentioned La Plaza Mall because actually La Plaza Mall is going gangbusters. I mean, they really are. They're having to get tenants to get out if they want to get tenants in. And Rebecca will tell you that that mall management and Simon is beyond themselves of how well they're doing. So we can absolutely do that.
But the reason why you can't tell everyone is because you're individually telling us who and
Exactly.
who. So that is the reason why.
And the state doesn't allow you
Exactly.
to have that information. Any other question on that?
Well, if we're on the subject of sales tax, what's the logic in how we calculated the increase? Is it just because it's a trend, or do we have a bigger reliance on maybe economic data, right? Because realistically, in 2020, you had $9 trillion pumped into the market, right? And then in 2022, you had another 4.5, and this is big picture, federal level, right? But from the bank's perspective, most of the stimulus has been spent. Consumer spending is flattening, plateauing. Credit card debt's all-time high, right? And so you see a lot of companies scaling back, right, on their operations, on level of inventory. You see big box stores starting to send inventory back to suppliers. And most recently, obviously, the peso itself has taken a big hit. You have a whole new power structure that's going to affect Mexico greatly. And so sales tax is obviously our most volatile thing to try to predict, right? To try to estimate. So missing that mark could greatly affect the budget.
Absolutely.
That was my point.
And
We've
so-
got a very conservative budget moving forward. It's less than 2%. So 2% should be pretty easy to hit.
Okay.
The last several years, we've reduced our forecast for sales tax. And in fact, this.
So it's still going up, but on a tighter margin.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And what helps you is that gap between revenue and expense. Even if you hit that mark, you've got a $6.7 million cushion.
Yes.
So that's the reason that we feel comfortable even with 2%. I would say that's conservative, but for the person that would think that it's not, you have $6.7 million to cover that. Does that make sense?
It does.
So one of the things that we used to talk about a lot, I don't like talking about it anymore because it gets people nervous. It doesn't get us nervous. And that's when we used to talk about the fact that McAllen was, this big part of the Rio Grande Valley market. And it was. But that's because every city around us were like little babies, right? And these cities are not babies anymore. They're 100,000 population cities. And so as long as that curve continues that way, I think that there's less concern about what's happening here. So in 2004, we had 52% of the market in sales tax revenue. 52%. We're at 37. And so for the untrained eye, that's like, whoa. But then you have to take it in a holistic approach and continue to ensure that this happens. So how much you know, how much do we control at Valora? All we can do is control the environment for people to feel comfortable to develop. And you all harp on that all the time. Is how are you gonna make development easier? How are you going to help developers move projects forward? That's the job that we have to ensure that that continues. So we show you this because this is reality. You're gonna see it somewhere. We don't hide it. It's what it is, but we're still a very, very healthy community.
Because that is against the whole county,
That is against the whole county.
the whole county.
Right.
And when the county is growing also in leaps and bounds,
Yep.
okay, that is why.
Yep.
Because the percentage of the growth of the county is growing more than the percentage of the growth of McAllen.
There you go. That's part of it too.
That's the development that is occurring not only in other cities, but in around the county that are in county properties that are bringing in sales tax revenues for sales in their areas. So it's, as long as you say the blue might say 37%, but as long as you're going up,
Yep. Very good shape.
Very good
That's
shape.
exactly right. It used to be, I like to oversimplify things. It used to be, and maybe it was 15 or 20 years ago, if you wanted to go to Walmart, you had to go to McAllen.
yeah.
We don't have to do that anymore, right? So, here's our total tax rate, that we have seen since 2015. So here we were at 4763. We held it steady next year, the following year. Then you went to 4792. That, we had a certificate of obligation for the fire station and for the parks office. Yes, I'm sorry, Parks, we took that long to build it. And then the following year was the bond election for drainage and traffic. Otherwise, McAllen just doesn't raise rates. So we raised them with a CO, then a GO, 4956, and then that's when you started your decline. 4799, 4572, and 4490. 4499 is what we are proposing. So the next one is part of, it's called your cover sheet. When Becky Grimes goes through that calculation, it spits this out, right? And this is really important, folks, because a few years back, I don't know how many years it was, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, the legislature changed, we used to call it the rollback rate, and now it's called the, what is it called? The voter approval tax rate. Because they wanted to be more transparent. I love that word. I don't know what it means, but I love it. And so what they wanted to show the community is whether the city was telling you the truth. Okay? And it used to be that the rollback rate was 8%. So as long as you didn't go past 8% increase in valuation, you don't have to do anything. Now it's 3.5. In order to go to 3.51, you have to have an election. I tell you all of this because last year, this is a great example of why we use the word significant. In the press release that we're going to send out about this proposed tax rate, we're using the word significant. Some would say that going from 4572 to 4499 is not significant. Well, I'll beg to differ, and I'll tell you why. Last year, the voter approval tax rate was 4597. Okay, in other words, you could not go above that number without going to the community for a vote. So not only did you go to that rate, you went to 4572, not 4597, 4572. Most cities, what they're doing, and I don't blame them, they're going to the voter approval rate. Because you can go to that rate, you don't have to worry about the community, and you know that you're getting a 3.5% increase in valuation. Look what we're doing this year. 4499, but the voter approval rate is 4775. That is a huge difference. And the reason is because the state allows you, when you reduce property taxes below the voter approval rate, you start getting a credit. Okay? And because you've done it 3 years in a row, that credit has become significant. So now the difference between the two, let's look at last year again, 4572 versus 45.97. This year is 44.99 versus 47.75. That is significant. And that's because if you look at that note on that page, and you have it in front of you, it's a 3% total increase in revenue, but 65% of it is due to new construction. And the rest is increase in values. So we don't have anything to do with that. That's the appraisal district. That means that the values of the existing properties are I'm not gonna say being pushed down, but the increase in their value is slowing down, at least for this year.
Maybe I lost it a little bit on the credit. So how do we utilize this credit to our advantage in the future? It's a credit towards,
You could raise the property tax rate without going to,
without going
all the
to-
way to 47.75.
We're elastic.
I see what you're saying, okay.
We're elastic in case of a catastrophe or a major hit of any, that
Exactly.
we don't have to go back because we're
So-
under,
And it's an accruing credit?
just in case.
Yeah,
Or is it
but
just
it
a
only-
one
but it
year?
only
We don't wanna do
carries
that.
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, it only carries, so you can only take a look back 3 years.
Yeah.
So it makes sense, if this is the third year you reduce it below that rate, then that credit is adding up. And so when you're out there talking to your community, I mean, that's where you could be without going to them. You could actually raise the property tax rate without going to them, and you reduce it. Any questions on that? And by the way, our total debt service requirement is $4.8 million. That's how much debt we've got that we've got to pay on a yearly basis.
And how much of that 4.8 is PUB?
No, this is just city.
It's
Now, I'm
just-
gonna be out of control.
It's a different animal.
Yeah.
I was there for 27 years.
No,
But
there-
because you have to, that's
I was just kidding.
perpetual.
Yes.
You need water and sewer, okay, forever and ever. So your investments are never equal like that. You gotta put up money in order to keep that.
As much debt as the PUB has, they still have one of the
Oh,
lowest
yeah.
rates in the state of Texas, and.
Oh, I know,
some of the best
but it's
quality.
higher than this.
Oh, yeah.
I just wanna let people know that. But it's because it's a different industry, it's a different way.
They used to have a big spender over there, they don't anymore. Okay, so, reduction in property tax rate, I'm not gonna beat a dead horse, $44.99. This is an interesting graph. So, this tells you the growth of your footprint. And what I find the most intriguing is, if you go back to 2014, you were at 7.3 and then 7.7. So 2 years in the sevens. Then 8.3, 8.5, 8.9. 3 years in the eights. Then 9.4, 9.6, 9.9. 3 years in the nines. And then you went 11, 12, 13. That's the footprint of our city. It is really, really growing. So that is very, very impressive. 77, 888, 999, 11, 12, 13. These are expenditures, increases. I don't know why we put the word decrease, but it happens from time to time right there. 10-year trend. To me, I always point to this, to our community. This is what you do for public safety. You never waver, you never slow down. Obviously, here, we had that year we talked about, and then we went right back up. General government, I really don't like that word, but that's a word that GASB uses, so we've got to use it. It's because it has a lot of departments in it, and we're going to see what that is in a minute.
That's been recorded.
Because if you take the number of departments here versus here, there's a lot more there. So what I tell the community is, number one priority, public safety. Number two, culture and recreation. Street maintenance, I mean, we show you this every year because we're really proud of it. $3.5 million of maintenance, and I joke that we say whether we need it or not. And so, could we use more money? Sometimes, yeah,
Sure.
sometimes. And we've done it. You can see it right there. A couple of times we've taken money from Development Corp and bumped it up a little bit. That's a discussion that we can have, but very healthy expense on street maintenance.
Since we're talking about street maintenance, I know in the past we've talked about the Development Corporation as being a fund for things other than street maintenance. Have we visited that topic lately, and what's our philosophy going forward?
And are we talking about job retention, job recruitment, or what?
Well, what I'm talking about is in Development Corporation, we've funded projects like the
New
Daffodil.
construction.
New construction,
Yeah.
like the Daffodil expansion, others. And we've, in the past, decided maybe that's not the best use of Development Corp funds in the future. If we weren't to use the Development Corporation fund for those types of projects, would in the future we'd have to increase the amount that we allot for this?
I don't think so. They're two different types of expenses, because this is street maintenance only. So we're actually going into the streets that exist and trying to take care of potholes and, PUB once in a while puts a line across the street, we gotta go and repair it. And then, asphalt and concrete has a certain amount of life. You know that you're gonna have to maintain it. And so we try to do the best job we can to be prudent on which ones to do. And then Development Corp takes care of new construction. Really only, that one was an anomaly when we did it there. It's new construction, which the Development Corporation Act allows you to do. You can do streets, drainage, water, sewer with Development Corp without a question. And what you'll see, and we're gonna go to the Development Corp next week, is that through the years, the last 2 years anyway, we've used less and less money from the Development Corp for streets. We just knew we had to do it the last few years because when we did the bond issue, we didn't go for enough money. We just didn't for the number of streets we were gonna do. And so we told the commission about 10 years ago is that we're gonna have to rely on the Development Corp until we even this out. And really, if you look at your Development Corp budget this year, there's very little that we're using. How much? 3.2 total on streets out of the Development Corp. New streets. So, 24-25 proposed budget. So you're starting your fund balance at $87.5 million. We're projecting $94.5 million to end. The big number to me is this one. That's that cushion that you've got. And I think it's appropriate to have a cushion because we're leveling off on sales tax like you brought up earlier. And then the bottom number of 232. That's too much money to have in the general fund reserve, in our opinion. And so we want to have a conversation with you about what to do with that excess later. Any questions on that? Our revenues are projected at $160 million for the general fund and $153 million of expenses. So here are the general fund departments. We always show you this because as we go through budget the next several weeks, you're going to hear from departments outside of this, right? And so it's important to always keep in mind what is the general fund. And so general government, that word that I don't like, that's all of that. It's the city commission, special services, city manager, international relations, which is a new department, city secretary, audit, vitals, passport, municipal finance, management, and so on. HR, planning, it's a lot of departments. And so when the public hears general government, it kind of has like a bad connotation to it, but it really is the core of us being able to provide what we do. And public safety is easy, right? It's always fire and police, but keep in mind that it's always traffic. It's also traffic because that's part of the safety of the community. animal care, radio shop, building improvements. Highways and streets is the obvious, street maintenance, engineering, lighting, health and welfare, and then culture and recreation. So if you compare the number of departments here versus there, there's a lot more here, and yet we spend almost as much money here. Those are big, big departments and quality of life for the community. Enterprise funds, which you're gonna hear also, sanitation is always the big monster too. I mean, that's a lot of employees that are part of Public Works, and that's only part of it. Because remember, Public Works also has general fund. Any stuff. Drainage, sidewalk construction, and street maintenance. So that's part of Public Works also. And then in sanitation, of course, is trash pickup, recycling, which we're gonna talk about at length here in a couple of weeks. We're gonna beg you for money. And so, we had a new meeting today with the city manager of the Rio Grande Valley, and we talked about the fact that we're a full-service city. We really are. Some cities don't have golf courses. They certainly don't have airports. They certainly don't have international bridges. Fleet maintenance, the depreciation fund. Believe it or not, cities our size usually do not have a depreciation fund. And that's a very, very important part of what we do. Total general fund revenues by source. Obviously, sales tax 43, property 34, but we also have a lot of others. We have a lot of use type of fees that are directly paid for by the people that use that type of service. Charges for services is what I'm talking about. Of course, we have franchise fees, licenses and permits, investments is not insignificant the last several years that really did help us. And I think we're budgeting 3.9%. You may want to look at that number a little closer moving forward.
We might, the interest rates are going down.
Yeah. So general fund expenditures, 49%, basically half of the general fund is public safety. It always is. And most cities are like that too. I mean, it's not an anomaly. And then the rest. And you'll see how the pie is broken up. We are increasing.
Can you break out in the future the culture and recreation percentage within that 19%, 18%, whatever it says, 16%?
Yeah, to give you the breakdown of that?
Yeah, just for
Sure.
my,
No, just the whole business.
just the whole
All
up
the
between
business.
culture and recreation for my,
I know it's different.
we're getting hit with recreation. We're getting hit out there for quality of life recreation needs. So,
Yes, sir.
and
Okay.
it warrants.
So these are the recommendations for new employees. 25 in total. The general fund, 9. And that's the tax office, grants, building maintenance, radio shop, 2 for fire, engineering, pools, and quinta. Now, when we go through the departments, obviously there was a lot of requests. And again, we're not suggesting that we don't need them. In a lot of cases, we believe, management believes that it's a matter of timing. For instance, in the fire department, the fire chief is already forecasting a new station, as we are, right? You've approved money to go buy property for station number 4. So you're gonna need 12 new firefighters for that station, but that station is 5 years from now. And so we have to be strategic about when to implement that plan, much like we did for Station 8. We took 3 or 4 years to ramp up all of the firefighters, and when we had them all, the station was under construction. And that's what we're gonna recommend that we do here. On the enterprise funds, there's another 16. You know, I was about to use the word easy, shouldn't use the word easy. It's a lot harder to add positions to the general fund because that impacts our citizens directly from the property tax rate. The others, you know, are revenues that come from uses, right? And so we can measure to the dollar how much it costs to pick up trash. Much like we can measure to the dollar how much it costs to produce a gallon of water. But on the general fund side, it's much harder to do that. And people don't like talking about property tax increases. So you're always going to see us making these kinds of recommendations because these are funds, these are enterprise funds that fund themselves. Who's paying for that new employee? The people holding a convention. Who's paying for this one? The one going across the bridge, and so on. And so that's what you're going to see from us on a yearly basis. General fund department's budget request. Again, this is where all the work goes into. The request was 19 million.
Is this 9, right?
Had we funded all of that request, we'd be in the hole $4.4 million in the general fund. And so,
Instead of 6.7
in the black.
in the black, if we funded everything, would be negative.
Minus 4.5.
And so, you know, it's a balancing act, and we do it together. I mean, every one of these people, and the ones not here, are in this room, going through every department and every line to make this recommendation. And if money was not an object, maybe they'd get 19 million, right? But we can't get there from here. Kind of like the New Jersey Turnpike, can't get there.
But there's a little.
There's a lot.
So that
We funded
I can
9.5 million.
go get it.
9.5 million is what we're recommending. Again, there's a lot of parameters that we have to use when we put the budget together. This is one of the most important ones. How much is your budget growing? It has to be a number that's sustainable. For us, 4% is at the top. Anything beyond that, you're reaching to ensure that you can keep up with that.
That is.
So from here is what we call the decision package. I would recommend that you all go through that. There's a lot of pages of it. It basically tells you what each department requested and what we're recommending from the management perspective. Hopefully you will conclude that we are hitting the things that are important to you, because that's what we try to do. I mean, we represent in a budget what we think you need and what you think we want and what your constituents want. So go through it, and then in the next few weeks, you know, you tell us what you think might be important for us to consider to add or consider to reduce. And that goes from page all the way to 37. So please review that when you have time, when you can't sleep. And then we can go back.
The night table.
And here are the pages.
Right next to
And
it.
what you're going to find is that I think that, you know, we're trying to be strategic again on what we're recommending. And it's a lot. I mean, we're recommending a lot. One of the things that you will notice is a lot of the recommendations are capital. If those are real needs, those are good things to do because it's a one-time expense. It's not a recurring expense. So you'll notice that theme throughout those pages.
Is there any?
One of the things that we're doing in some departments is just standby pay. It's not a lot of money, but it's important because we're basically paying employees to be on standby. Honestly, we didn't realize that some departments were still not getting paid or not getting paid enough. So what that means is that an employee is basically told, you're on standby tonight, don't go anywhere, especially not a bar, because I'm gonna call you, or I might call you. And they're at home and they don't get paid, and that's not right. So, same page you saw earlier. Again, we're gonna go through probably every one of those in the next several weeks. Capital projects, something that we have been really working hard for a long time. And it's something that McAllen has always done. So that's the breakup of capital that we're spending throughout the city. The two big ones are the obvious ones, Anzal Duas Cargo and Quinta Mazatlan. But there are others. Those are still the ARPA funds that we still need to spend. We think in the next 24 months we're gonna put those projects out.
What is that, 18 or what?
18 million.
18?
Yeah. And those are projects that the city commission chose.
Is this, if you don't spend it, you lose it?
Yes, that will not happen.
Just wanted to point everything out, I knew it. No, it's because, yeah.
Yes, sir. Very good point. You gotta stay on top of that. And then capital out of the development corp, 9 million, and yet you're gonna see a very healthy fund balance in the development corp. A lot of work to do. Bus terminal also, $11.5 million.
We have, I've seen in the past a list of capital improvement projects that include, like, let's say, street widening projects, new drainage projects. It's like a $100 million list. Are we gonna go over that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Absolutely. We'll go over it on Tuesday the 20th.
Great.
And when are we gonna discuss the ARPA?
Actually, the ARPA fund, we can bring back to you. You've already designated projects that we're already working on. We're either in planning or design.
Could you either put it in the Friday packet or whatever, or what,
Okay?
so we can recall, analyze that?
Yep, it's, the tennis center, parkland, things like that. Yeah, we'll put that up.
Good.
There's 13 projects towards that 18 million.
Perfect.
Put it in the project. So a development corp,
With a possible start time.
okay, you got it. What page is that, development corp?
Huh?
Okay, so we're projecting a $25.6 million beginning fund balance. And, yeah, $16 million ending fund balance. Again, that's conservative in that we've got, not a lot, but a few projects that take a lot of time. And so they may go into the next year. But what you're gonna see is that they're very few. Like we said earlier, it's only $3 million towards streets. Yeah, we've got Benson Road. We'll go through it.
Daffodil.
Ninguno de los míos,
So-
ninguno de acá.
You got $4.2 million of agencies.
Echar algo para el sur.
Business district, 12.2 million. Street and drainage, 3.2. Recreation, 488,000. And other, 9.5. We'll tell you what the other is when we get there. But a lot of it is 380 agreements that you've already got in place. Then we've got some debt for Plaza Mall that we took on many years ago, for the parking garage, and Texas A&M
That
Alright.
is paid for itself.
so far.
Yeah,
Yes.
parking garage.
Yeah, and we're actually starting to look at budgeting money towards it, which means that they're making that much money. Convention Center, beginning 10.2 million fund balance, ending about 7. The budgets for the Convention Center have been very consistent and very conservative. But they're doing a great job out there to ensure that we're in the black every year. And so what you're gonna see is that we don't increase our revenue projections. We either make them flat or have a very, very small increase, if any. And that's what you're gonna see on that page. Performing arts, you know, this fund is really outperforming what we thought we would do. The performing arts is outperforming. Really proud of where we are. Not a big expense, but yet doing well and in the black on its own.
Mientras se pague solo. Right?
Say that again, Roy. The last thing you said.
The performing arts is doing well. It's probably ahead of where we had projected when we built it. It's in the black, and it's maintaining itself. Remember, the venue tax is a revenue that we get from hotel tax. It can only be used here and nowhere else. And so it's between that tax, the hot tax, and their own money that maintains the fund.
Are we gonna discuss the hotel occupancy tax?
Yes, sir.
The percentage that,
Next page.
okay.
Here it is.
So the hotel occupancy tax is an in and out, okay? And so, and what does that mean is that, you know, traditionally, it has allocated money to Chamber of Commerce, Convention Center, and Performing Arts. So remember that the hotel occupancy tax is a very restrictive tax through state law, right? And they want you, the state wants you to focus on 3 things. On putting heads in beds, that is the most important. Okay, that is the mission, is to put visitors in hotel rooms, right? That's what the money should be spent for. So how are you spending it? You spend it in the convention center, that brings people in, that hopefully puts people in the hotels. The Chamber of Commerce is an allowed expense by state law as a hotel occupancy tax. And the Performing Arts Fund, Performing Arts Center. And then the global is marketing. If it were up to the state, you would spend it on the convention center and marketing, and that's it. Because that's what the hotel tax is for.
And what about sports revenue? Sports,
Absolutely. If you can, you can show that it's gonna put heads in beds, yeah. But know that this is the way we divide the tax. It's a 7-cent tax. 2% goes to the chamber. That's been, I don't know if we like it or we don't like it, but it's been an automatic 2 cents. The convention center gets 4, and the performing arts gets 1.
You're talking about the 7% that a hotel room
Charges.
charges
Yeah.
above their
Right.
rate.
The
Right?
7% above, the rate plus 7%,
7%.
plus 2% for venue.
Got it.
and what is the
The benefits.
state limit at that percent?
benefit
What
from all
percentage?
I
That's why
think,
it goes to
I
this.
think there's one more tax that you can increase. And I would have to ask the attorney to look at the requirements of that, but you need an election. It has to be a referendum.
That's what I've been talking about and for a couple of other things. So we'll discuss it.
Okay? So, like the venue tax that's on top of this, well, I got it over here. That's on top of that, I think I want to show it here. There it is. That's 2 cents. That goes to the Performing Arts Center. That was an actual election that we had in McAllen to allow us to charge the additional 2 cents.
Really?
And the legislature had to approve. Okay, so here's the venue tax, 1.43. Where is it going? It's going to the Performing Arts Center and the debt service for the Performing Arts Center, which obviously is a lot. Airport fund,
How long was that bond for the performing arts?
I want to say it was a 20-year bond. We can show you the schedule of all the outstanding debt.
Please.
Yeah, there was two of them. There was actually,
Well, it's 20 years, we were in there, what, 9 years?
no, so it is, 2015, yeah,
Hey, man, we got 10 halfway down.
yeah, yeah.
It will come to zero.
Airport,
Eventually.
you know, they're coming down to a soft landing, pun intended. 18.9 million starting fund balance, 12.7. The reason for that is there was a lot of capital in there. We're allowed to have the PFC, which helps us fund the local match for all the federal money that we get. It's usually 80-20 or 90-10. And so very, very healthy fund at the airport. And on top of that, it funds the general fund, $2.1 million. So like the bridge, it's a revenue producer for us.
I really like the Olympics, the advertising marketing that we did with the Olympics. I imagine we got a lot of viewers.
And is Jeremy here? Good job, Jeremy. Mexico City's doing good, Cancun is doing good, Austin is doing good. Yeah, they're flying high.
See that?
I don't know where that's coming from. You get me out of the office when this happens. Toll Bridge, this is Hidalgo.
Top of mind already.
Obviously, Hidalgo Bridge is a very, very healthy fund.
Almost a million.
It does very, very well, even when we took trucks out of there, whatever it was, 15 years ago. It's an in and out also, and we do share the revenue with Hidalgo. That's a predetermined amount. Hidalgo, in fact, there's a caveat in our agreement that they get a minimum and no less than that minimum. And another thing that we do for them that we're not required to do is that we pay them quarterly. That's a big fund for the city of Hidalgo. And so you see it right here. This year, 3.2 million.
Cash flow.
Next year, 3.4 million. But to us, that bridge brings us $6 million to the general fund. So that money, again, pushes down the tax rate for our citizens. And on top of that, you see the toll bridge CIPs. That amount of money, we take 50 cents out of every toll and put it away in CIP to do necessary improvements at the bridge. Nobody else does that.
That's kind of like a depreciation.
Exactly. That's San Salduas. We're projecting about, I don't remember if it's either 4 or 6 months of truck traffic, and of course it's going to take some time to ramp up. But nevertheless, even though we're just ramping up, what this fund is showing you is that not only is it making enough money for operations, it's making enough money for all of the debt on its own. Remember, Hidalgo Bridge was helping Anzalduas pay that debt for many years. And last year was the first time that was not necessary.
The revenue for southbound commercial, that's 2.3 projected, what, April or May through September?
Yeah,
Just that short period?
yeah. Yeah, eventually, our studies show that very quickly, we should get to 800 trucks a day. Thank you, Juan.
Super.
Here's the CIP that we talked about earlier. We take money from every toll, put it in the bank, and use it. These are projects that superintendent is recommending, and we have projects every single year. There's always improvements needed out there. Here's the cargo fund, that's what's built in the port of entry. Obviously, we forecast that we're gonna finish the project this coming fiscal year and have some money to send back towards that debt. The PEG fund is something that we really need to spend a little bit of time on. It's not a lot of money, but yet, it's a lot of money. And you can only use it, this is the public education, what's the G for? Government, public education government fund. We collect it and we can only use it to help us broadcast city commission meetings. So anything having to do with that, whether it's cameras or lighting or whatever. But that really is a lot of money that we need to start looking at what we're gonna do. We're gonna do improvements to the chamber again. We're gonna recommend, and we'll show you the detail, we're gonna recommend, we pretty up the room a little bit, get new chairs, a little more professional, and a few other things that we will go through, hopefully you agree. It's not a lot of money, but it's a lot of stuff. Drainage fee, I think the big key here is, if you look at the bottom line, we're starting with 4.5 million, total resources of 11, and then the bottom line, we're out of money. That means that we're finished. We project that the drainage fee fund, no, that's the wrong fund, I'm sorry. Never gonna finish, sorry, take it back. That was the bond issue. So, many years ago, you approved the drainage fee fund. We talked about how important this was gonna be to continually increase our capacity and infrastructure, and someday use this money to help us maintain it. So, drainage fee fund, we're very thankful that the city commission approved it, and look at the projects that we're doing. Balboa, another Balboa, Harvey, McAllen lateral channel, Northeast, and then Torres Acres. And by the way, we're hoping that the federal government is gonna help us with Torres Acres.
Who?
Torres Acres?
That's the projected,
Federal government.
projected grant,
Okay, great.
Yeah,
and they would help why? Or what is that one?
because we submitted it as is it a hazard mitigation grant? And right now, it's in the budget, so if they approve it, we're in.
Awesome.
Thank you, Mark. That's all I know how to, CIP fund, so we put as much as we can into this fund. We've got a little bit of cushion there at the end that we can talk about. You tell us if you agree with the projects we're recommending, and then what we want to do with the rest of that money. But it's been a good strategy of that in and out. We're looking at also some money coming in from grants. That's what this is right here. Here's the detail of the expense. Okay, one of the things that you're gonna see in here, yeah, is that the CIP? Yeah. One of the things that we're recommending is, you've already approved the money for design of the animal shelter. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I don't want us to forget this. You approved the money for the design of the animal shelter, right? And that is about to get underway. We're about to take it to the city commission probably in the next couple of weeks. I mean, next couple of meetings. We've got a committee together with PVAS and others. But here's the big thing. We are about to sell the property, the Parks Office property. That's gonna get us $2.6 million. We're recommending that we use it here for the animal shelter. God loves McAllen, okay? Our share of the animal shelter is $2.6 million. If Edinburgh comes in, okay? And if so, we're recommending we use that money, it's a one-time slug, for the animal shelter. We're gonna have that discussion later. You tell us if that's what you wanna do. Here's one of the, this is what I thought I was gonna get. Sorry, I got excited. So, traffic and drainage bond, we project that we will finish all of those projects next fiscal year. I'm super proud of the staff because when we passed, or when we requested that we do the bond election in 2018, we told the city commission we needed 8 years to complete it. And we're gonna do it in 6.
Oh,
New projects.
Here is the, we call it infrastructure and improvement, it's the ARPA. We will get you that list, Commissioner, and we can review it again. Some of them have started design, some of them have not. For instance, there's a property that we're looking at, Lark, as you all know, that we're trying to negotiate. And there's some money not only tied to the purchase of the land, but what might go on it. So we can certainly have that discussion. Health insurance, here's what I'm focused on. Jody's not here. It took us a long time to get here. You hear that breath? But last year, we had to not only do our usual expenditure from every fund, but we had to do a transfer again to fill a gap. And that gap kept getting smaller. Last year it was 1.6 million. We're projecting we don't need it this year. We'll see how we do. It's gonna be close. These are the agencies. In the general fund, these are agencies that you usually fund. On the development corporation side, they've already made that decision, so that's already in the budget. So we're gonna visit all of those, both general fund and development corp. We're pretty consistent. We're pretty consistent on, what we're doing this year versus last. There were a couple of anomalies that we saw in requests. I want you to keep this in mind. We've got a new CEO at the chamber, and I've had long talks with my friend over there. We've come to an agreement, and we think that we're gonna be okay with this number. Last year, they received $702,000. This is from the general fund, okay? This is in addition to what goes from the hotel occupancy tax. We're recommending $950,000. That's a 35% increase. I met with Liz again yesterday, and you can ask her yourself, but I think that she's relatively happy with what she thinks she can do. They want to grow their programs, and so do we. But we have to do it in a way that we can sustain. And so the request was substantial right here, and you have it in your book. And we're gonna go through it. I'm not suggesting that that's the number, but right now the budget reflects $950,000. That's all we got today. Anything that you saw today that we need to bring, we heard some of the things that you want more information on. We intend to go through all of this in the next few weeks. And we'll entertain any questions.
Excellent. Well, actually, not a question, just a comment, I think we're in a position that's just beautiful. It's a beautiful problem to have. We are doing very well. So actually, what I want to do is thank our commission for doing excellent. I really think we have one hell of a commission. They stay out of your way, I hope. I know they call Roy, Michelle, Joe, Jeff, and Mike. And when I represent other cities, I know I always tell them, hire good people and let them work. So I want to thank you all because believe me, I've been around, and McAllen is amazing. And you guys are amazing, so muchas gracias. You guys are amazing.
Ditto.
Okay, so our next budget meeting is next week, Tuesday and Wednesday. So we've got a city commission on Monday, then Tuesday, Wednesday, 4 o'clock. Following week, Tuesday, Wednesday, following week, Tuesday. So again, we want to thank you in advance for the time that you're going to be taking. We also have a special meeting next Tuesday at noon, and the following Tuesday at noon. So if you don't have any questions, that's all we have. Thank you.
We don't have a executive. We don't have an
No,
executive.
no, Jim.
I've heard that before.